Welcome back to the U.S. Navy History Podcast. I am Dale, your captain, and I am joined by the XO, the Kristoff.
Hello, Dale.
Hey, buddy.
So good to be here today.
So, we're going to continue our Enterprise series. Up next is the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, that CVN-65.
Yeah.
So, you ready to get underway? Let's get into her vital statistics. So she was built at Newport News in the shipbuilding area there. She was preceded by the Kitty Hawk class and succeeded by the Nimitz class. She's actually a class all by herself.
Is it the Enterprise class?
Yeah.
I was guessing, but it was an educated guess.
Well, I mean, she was the very first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. So she was experimental. She's based on the Nimitz class, but she does have her own...
je ne sais quoi. There we go.
Je ne sais yes. All right, she was built in 1958 to 1961. Ooh. Took them 3 years. She served from 1961 to 2012.
Whoa. That is a long time for a ship to be afloat.
She had a long lifespan, nice. Yes. I believe the U.S. Navy plans to try to get 40 years out of every...
That seems like a good return on investment, frankly.
Yeah. I've actually been on her while active. She used to be berthed right next door to us.
No kidding. That's cool.
Yep. And back in the early aughts, Garth Brooks did a USO show on her while in port, so everybody was able to...
That's cool. I believe that was televised. I remember that. That's awesome.
I was there.
Were you losing your mind and waving your cover all over the place? Okay.
Yeah. No, you see, I got to meet him
a
couple days before because he came and toured our boat because the Enterprise was underway at the time. So he came, saw our boat, and so get a little bit of familiarity.
Nice.
So she was in inactive status from 2012 to 2017 before deciding to go ahead and get her broken up, retire her permanently. And thanks to that nuclear reactor, that means that she can never be a museum ship.
Yeah, I guess that's a limitation now. We're going to see fewer museum ships as a result.
Right. Because of the way it is, they would have to remove the nuclear reactors. And I believe the Enterprise had 8. Well, when we get back through my notes, we'll hit that more.
I guess I never, for whatever reason, I just thought there was 1 reactor. But golly, that's a lot of power.
Right. Well, again, this was the very beginning. This was the 1950s, late 50s, early 60s when she was built. So this is still in the infancy of nuclear power.
They have no baseline, so they're like, I don't know, put 8 on there.
Well, I mean, they're going to be smaller
for sure
than what we got on new modern carriers and even submarines. But because of those and how these boats are built, you can't just remove them like you would a normal piece of machinery. You actually have to cut the boat in half.
Yeah, I would imagine it's something you build the boat around. That's a pretty vital component.
So because of that, there's no museum ship coming out.
Well, that stinks. So what? I mean, that limits what. I guess they can't scuttle it either. What does that mean from a Any, not just the Enterprise, but any nuclear powered ship, would that cause a problem?
Not if you
Okay.
remove the nuclear material. If you get that out, you clean everything and decontaminate all the equipment that is on the
Hmm.
primary loop that actually is exposed to all that radiation. Yeah, you get that stuff out, you can scuttle it.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, it was 10 years ago, I was looking at decommissioned nuclear sites that were for sale to build an enormous underground house. But I was always a little leery of the residual radiation. So I didn't pull the trigger. That, and I had no money.
I think it was
Well,
more the money.
probably.
As long as the site's cleaned up properly, it's
Yeah,
fine.
I guess I did lean on the not having any money aspect. Well, because somebody built like the equivalent of a 150,000 square foot house, but it was down into the ground where the silo is. And I was like, can you imagine having a house that
Yeah.
huge? But then my imagination was bigger than my bank account.
Here's the thing, though. How are you going to keep that thing clean?
I don't know. I'm thinking it could be so big, some rooms could be
Yeah.
disposable. And you just start at the bottom and it's like, look, well, I guess we're done with this room. And you move up. I was
Okay.
young.
Obvious. All right. She was built by the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company at a cost of $451.3
Whoa, that was
million.
1950s dollars.
That was late 1950s dollars. Yes. You want to do a
Sure.
conversion?
That's back when the
All
good
right. Let me
old
see.
gold standard was in effect. So that's going to be
Uh,
massive. I'm guessing, I'm not looking at the
Money.
conversion, 450 million. I'm guessing that's going to be something like 2 billion.
Um, Today that would be
Yeah.
$4.9 billion.
That's a lot of money.
All right. Her keel was laid down February 4th, 1950 and launched September 24th, 1960. That was christened. She was delivered to the Navy October 29th, 1961, commissioned November 25th, and then she was refitted September 27th, 1990. I'm sorry. She was stricken from the record February 3rd. Her motto was ready on arrival, the first, the finest, 8 reactors, none
That's a
faster.
pretty good motto.
Yeah. Her nickname was the Big E. She displaced
Ooh.
94,781 tons when fully
Oh,
loaded.
that would boggle the mind of any ancient engineer. You know what I mean? That's incredible.
Her original length was 1,088 feet, and after her refit, she was
Dang.
1,123 feet. She had a beam at her water line of 132.8 feet, and a beam that included her flight deck was 257.2 feet.
So tall.
No, that's
Oh,
width.
what did I say? Okay.
Tall.
It's
I mean,
yes.
she is tall.
That's
Yes.
wide.
Let's see. She had a draft of 39 feet.
Just for the record, I traditionally don't talk about the width of the ladies. So,
Oh, it's okay. You can talk about.
I'll make an exception.
Yes. She was powered by 8 Westinghouse A2W nuclear reactors. She had 4 Westinghouse geared steam turbines powering 4 shafts. She had 280,000
Whoa.
horsepower.
280,000
Hmm.
horsepower. Think of what she could tow.
A lot of planes.
Right.
She had a speed of
Dang.
33.6 knots. Or for you people who don't know what a knot is, 38. Her range was unlimited.
Yeah, she'd never have to stop to refuel. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
eventually she would, but
After
yeah,
about 20 to
that's
25 years.
insane.
Hmm. Yeah, so her refit was also her midlife refueling.
That is awesome.
She had a complement at full capacity of 5,828. That is the crew and air wing, or air
Wow.
wings.
That is impressive.
Her- The ship's company was 3,000. 2,000, 2,700 enlisted, 150 chiefs, 150 officers. Her air wing was 1,800. That's 250 pilots and 1,500.
That's a lot of guys.
Let's see. She had a ANSPS 48 3D air search radar. She had a ANSPS 49 2D air search radar. She had a Mark 23 target acquisition system and a fire control radar. That was
Hmm.
her sensors. Her electronic warfare and decoys, the ANSLQ 32 electronic warfare suite. She had a Mark 36 SRB0 or SRBOC. Those are pretty much chaff
Yeah.
countermeasures. Her armament was she had 3 NATO Sea Sparrow launchers. She had 3 20mm Phalanx Sea Whiz mounts. She had 2 RAM launchers.
What is a RAM launcher? Is that like what shot the airplanes or?
It's a rolling
Okay.
airframe missile. It's a small, lightweight, infrared
Wow.
homing surface to air
I
missile.
was just thinking about the longevity of this ship and the technology that you're listing now. And so this was late 1950s, early 1960s technology. And when it came to refitting in the 90s, imagine the sailors that were born after the ship was commissioned getting on the ship and looking at all the equipment and thinking, this is already old. Like this has been around a while.
Here's the thing: every time they go into the shipyards after a deployment,
Okay.
things are updated.
So it's more frequent than that. The Okay, okay.
The midlife refueling, yes.
Thank you for illuminating my dim mind.
I'll tell you what, that carrier smelled like mothballs when I was on her, in her
Even when
superstructure.
active? Huh.
Yes, yeah. Each boat gets its own smell.
That's worthy of an episode, I think. I would really like to dig into that to say what are the smells?
Yeah, because like as you know, my father served
Yeah.
on the USS Missouri, battleship Missouri, and so I spent as a kid a lot of time on the boat visiting him. Got to go underway on her once, but when I went to go visit her after she was turned into a museum ship,
Hmm.
grabbed my family, my wife, my kids, and went out to Honolulu to visit her. Once I stepped into the superstructure and that smell hit me, I'm like, this, I know that smell. This is the
Did
Missouri.
it smell like Marlboros? That's my guess. Okay.
No, no. It's kind of hard to
But once you know it, it's like,
describe.
this is the Missouri. This is, wow, that's
Yep.
wild.
All right. Let's move on from our
All
olfactory
right.
senses. Her armor. She had an 8-inch aluminum belt, which is about equivalent to 4 inches rolled steel armor. She had an armored flight deck, hangar, magazines, and reactor. She could hold up to 90 aircraft, but she typically had about 60 or a little over 60. Her flight deck was 1,123 feet with 4 steam powered catapults. All right, so that
Man.
is her
4 catapults. I
characteristics.
was just thinking how fast you could just in wartime just boom, 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 boom. Those planes are in the air in a hurry. Wow.
Mm-hmm. So you were asking about the
Uh huh.
nuclear reactors and everything like that. So when she was designed, her design project name was SCB-160.
Okay. That's. I'm. I love code names. Let me just put that out there into the universe. Cool code names are everything. That's lame, but maybe it's purposefully lame. It's like, oh, I'm a spy. I don't want to look into that
Well,
at all.
the well, the SCB is just the
I
ship
see.
characteristics board.
Okay.
That's the designer. Now, she was intended as the lead ship of 6 nuclear powered carriers. But because of the massive increase in construction costs, this means that the rest of the vessels
Right.
were canceled. She is the only carrier to house more than 2 nuclear reactors. Because this is when they were going
Oh
from
yeah.
boilers to nuclear powered, and a standard ship of her size would have had 8
Yeah, it makes
boilers.
perfect sense. It's like we'll just do a 1-for-1 substitution, but not they didn't have the long-term tests of how much energy can this output and how long will it last.
There were also smaller
Reactors
uh, reactors than what we use
makes sense.
today. She's the only carrier with
4
4 rudders.
rudders.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, that seems what would be the purpose do you think from your naval experience? Is that just ability to turn faster or what why would you need so many?
They probably designed her to have a rudder behind each screw instead of what it is now with them being
Okay,
between 1 and 2, and then another one between 3 and 4.
that makes sense. Wow. I wonder how that affected her turning ability. Well, I guess this was experimental, like you said. The fact that they changed
She,
how
yeah,
modern ships are were probably based on this design.
yeah, and she also had a more cruiser-like hull.
I could see that. I yeah. I have to remind myself this was an experiment, so they're gonna try a bunch of stuff, and the only way you can
Mm-hmm.
try it, they didn't have a lot of computer aided testing, was by building it.
All right, let's see. So when she was launched, she was sponsored by the wife of William B. Frank, who was the Secretary of the Navy at that time. When she was officially commissioned on November 25th, 1961, her first captain was Captain Vincent P. DePoy, who was formerly of Fighting Squadron 6 on the Yorktown, on the
Oh
Enterprise
yes,
CV-6.
that we just talked about. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So on January 12th, 1962, she made her maiden voyage, which is her shakedown cruise. And this is when they start really testing her out with training exercises, which are really designed to determine what her full capabilities are. She did a full speed run with a escort the USS Laffey, which was a destroyer. And this demonstrated pretty much just her sheer power and speed. After the race, the Laffey radioed her, "You win
Wow.
the race. Our fuel's gone. Our top side is salted. The crew's wet, and our engines are
Dang.
exhausted."
I mean, that's what a military advantage. You know what I mean? You can outrun almost any other ship on the planet.
Oh yeah, the carriers are
And unlimited
fast.
fuel.
They may not be able to. They may not be able to get
Yeah.
up to speed quickly, like on the line. That destroyer
Oh, yeah.
surged forward, and then they're like, "Oh, look at them back there! Ha 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 ha!" And then all of a sudden they just start getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then as they pull up, they just hi
Right.
waving to them, and then they get farther away and farther away and farther
And with
away.
that kind of displacement, I'm assuming waves and the more turbulent seas would not be as much of an issue.
No, they're really not. Uh, Back in my day, when we would do unreps, that's underway replenishments.
Oh,
That's
well,
when we get
at sea.
supplies like
Yeah.
at sea, like food, personnel, JP5, which
Hmm.
is aircraft fuel, things of that nature. We would be going along. We'd have the supply ship come up to us, and they'd shoot lines over. We catch them, and they'd
Cool.
start transferring stuff. Right? We're sitting there, smooth as glass. That replenishment tanker, up, down, up,
Oh
down,
my gosh.
left, right, up, down. And if we had a destroyer on the other side, transferring to them, because sometimes we'd
Yeah.
have another, like a destroyer on our port side with the oiler on the starboard side, that destroyer's doing even worse.
Oh boy.
So yeah, no, that they are incredibly
So,
smooth.
listener, if you have an interest in joining the Navy and have a propensity to get seasick, try to get assigned on an aircraft carrier.
So on February 20th, 1962, Enterprise was the tracking and measuring station for the flight of Friendship 7.
Remind me what Friendship 7 was.
That was Project Mercury, in which Lieutenant Colonel John H. Glenn Jr. made the first American
That's
orbital
right.
spaceflight.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
I mean, both the flight and the tracking.
yeah, absolutely. The Enterprise completed her shakedown activities at Norfolk Naval Station on April 5th, 1962. So she joins the Second Fleet on June 25th, 1962. And her first operational deployment was taking part in exercise Lantflex 2-62 off of the East Coast for training. This was a nuclear strike exercise in conjunction with the carrier Forrestal, or as we nicknamed her, the Forest Fire.
I'm sure that was an endearing nickname.
Well, I mean, in August, the Enterprise joined the Sixth Fleet in the Mediterranean Sea and returning to Norfolk, Virginia on October 11th of the night. That was her first
Nice.
fun time.
So, have you ever been on a shakedown cruise for a newer ship? Because I imagine that's a pretty exciting exercise.
The shakedown cruise only happens
Maybe once or twice.
really
Yeah.
a couple times. That was the first time she's handed over to the Navy and they put her through her paces. And the second time is for, at least for a carrier, would be after her midlife refueling, because that's when they do a massive overhaul. and they have to
Test everything. Yeah.
test all the new equipment. That's when everything is upgraded. Midlife overhaul takes
Oh,
years.
man. So every single station, I'm guessing, has to go through some set of paces to make sure all these systems are working. So there's constant,
Oh yeah,
all right, this team does this and go do that and gear up for this. And
yeah. It's pretty much it's lots of war games, lots of casualty training, things
excellent.
of that nature. Uh, One of the fun things that I never got to experience that I really wanted to is high
Oh,
speed
dude.
turns. That's when they go flank speed and they go hard port, hard starboard. When you can get that carrier doing like a
Wow.
45-degree angle.
I bet there'd be a lot of like drifting to a degree because you're just all that momentum going one direction. You're just really trying to curve it around. That's crazy.
I mean, after every yard period, you're doing training exercises. Usually, it's like
Mhm.
JTFX, Com2X type of deals, where it's just you're requalifying, getting all your qualifications so you can go
Yeah,
out and fight. And that's a lot of uh, war games, lots of casualty drills, and that's in addition to all the casualty drills you do under normal operations. It's a lot of training.
that's why we're the best. I'm including myself
Not
in
wrong.
something I'm not really a part of except by citizenship.
Well, you weren't
Okay. Yeah,
wrong
no,
when you
no,
said
yeah.
we're the best. You were
Right.
wrong when you
we
included yourself.
we, I guess. The royal we. But
The royal we, yeah. All right, let's get to her first
oh,
international crisis.
yeah, this is
1962. What do you think
I'm
the
guessing the
international
Cuban
crisis was
Missile
in 62?
Crisis.
You are correct, sir. You remember what
Yes, we
happened there?
discovered that Cuba had stationed nuclear warheads from the Soviet Union, and that's a mere 90 miles off the coast. So that is terrifying to a nation that is like the Cold War is really heating up. And Cuba, I think, just went through revolution in the past, definitely within the past decade. I want to say it was 58, 59. It was in the 50s. So they had recently become a communist country, which was terrifying for America. And then these warheads show up, and it's just like, oh, this is bad news. And so this was, I know, Kennedy's first real test.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Correct. Mostly, it was the Soviet Union was constructing
Oh,
nuclear
okay.
missile
I thought they had just
sites on Cuba.
transferred.
They had no,
That's
they were building the sites. There might have
even
been some
worse.
nuclear weapons there already,
Okay.
but
Ooh,
they
ho,
weren't
ho,
set up
ho.
yet. That was
Yeah.
the whole thing of stopping them from setting up and
Mm-hmm.
getting that crap out of there. So Kennedy, he orders the U.S. Department of Defense to conduct a large-scale buildup. So among the preparations, the U.S. Atlantic Fleet readied a large number of ships. And on October 22nd, President Kennedy ordered a naval and air quarantine on shipment and offensive military equipment to Cuba and demanded that the Soviets dismantle the missile sites there.
Yeah.
So it's a
This was
modern blockade.
this was kind of a no-win situation in a way. He had to be very strategic because that's an act of war. Like you blockade a place, that's you don't want to have war with another nuclear power. Um, that could be.
They're
Are
not
they
even a
not?
nuclear power yet.
Because they're building nuclear missile. Is it not nuclear missile
Cuba?
silos?
Well,
Oh
yeah,
no,
but
right.
it
Yeah,
wasn't
but
Cuba who
so
was building it. It was Russia.
you're basically
So,
making demands of the Soviet Union by proxy.
yeah,
Right.
and
And
Cuba's caught in
so
the middle.
how do you handle this? And Ugh, this is a tricky situation.
Yeah. So 5 Second Fleet carriers participated in the blockade. The Enterprise, as part of Task Force 135, the Independence, the Essex, the Lake Champlain, and the Randolph. They also had they were also backed by shore-based aircraft
Yeah,
because
it's right there.
Cuba's just right there. By October 28th, the standoff was over. Remember what concessions we had to make to get
I
those
think we
nuclear
had
missiles
to.
out of
It had to
Cuba?
do with our presence in Eastern Europe. I want to say Poland or no. Uh, I don't remember, but we would basically withdraw from some other place. Like they would withdraw from there. I think we would do the same in other parts of the world, but I don't remember exactly what.
Right. We removed
That's
nuclear
right.
missiles from Italy and Turkey.
That seems fair. Nobody wants that on their doorstep.
All right. So that's going to take us to their second and third deployments. On December 19th, 1962, a Grumman E-2 Hawkeye, that's the
Hmm.
plane with the big radar dish on top, was catapulted off the Enterprise in the first shipboard test of a nose wheel launch bar designed to replace the catapult bridle. Uh, Minutes later, a second launch was with a launch bar was made by a Grumman A-62 Intruder. That is a twin jet attack aircraft. And this demonstrated one of the primary design goals of reducing launch intervals.
Oh yeah,
We need to launch fast. So she was a testing
that's
platform for
amazing.
that. So there is a new captain in for these next two deployments, Captain Frederick H. Mitchells, and the deployments were to the Mediterranean. Now, during her third deployment, she was part of Operation Sea Orbit. This is the world's first nuclear-powered task force with the cruisers Long Beach
Oh,
and Bainbridge. And this was a world uh, tour.
and so am I to infer that the cruisers are also nuclear powered? Okay.
On February 25th, 1964, a crewman of the Finnish merchant ship Verna Paulin was injured in a fall while the ship was in the vicinity of Suda Bay, Greece.
Oh,
That's a pretty place. I've been there. And the Enterprise answered her call for assistance. A surgeon was transferred to the Verna Paulin by helicopter.
cool. Which is pretty. Those are still pretty new at this time. Also, wait, what year did you say?
64.
Never mind. I was thinking late 50s. Go ahead.
In October of 64, the Enterprise returned to Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company for her first refueling and overhaul. Because, brand new, they
Oh
refuel a
yeah.
little bit more often than we do now. Now we just do it once.
That's awesome.
So during this refit, her 8 nuclear reactors were refueled after steaming over 200,000
Golly.
nautical miles. And the ship's electronics were updated. Her refit was done June 22nd, 1965. So, what do you think was happening in
Well,
65?
I know there was an escalating conflict in Southeast Asia. I want to say Vietnam conflict, their civil war.
Yeah. Yep. So in November of 65, she was transferred to the 7th Fleet over there at NAS Alameda, California. And on December 2nd, she became the first nuclear powered ship to engage in combat when she launched aircraft against the Viet Cong near Bain Hoi, Bean Hoi City. She led Carrier Division 3, which had Carrier Air Wing 9 aboard. This division also had the Bainbridge, the Barry, and the Samuel
Hmm.
B. Roberts. She launched 125
Dang.
sorties on the first day, dropping 151 tons of bombs and rockets on the
Wow.
enemy supply line. On December 3rd, she set a record of 165 strikes in a single day.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So she returned to Naval Base Subic Bay on December 8th, 1966, and she was taking on supplies. That is when Rear Admiral Walter L. Curtis Jr., who was commander of Carrier Division 9, brought his flag
Hmm.
aboard. And that made her the flagship.
Nice. That would be a good ship to choose, I would think.
Mm,
Wait a minute. Okay, question about flagships. You said he brought his flag
okay.
aboard. Now, I always thought, oh, that's
Yeah.
the United States flag, but every ship has the US flag because it's an American ship. Um, does
Yeah.
does an admiral have their own flag, or is it like a common, hey, this is the flag of the admiral flag? You know what I mean?
Well, the admiral's a
Okay.
flag officer.
So I don't know if like the admirals are all rounded up. It's like, all right, today in class we're going to make our own flags, and then they make some really badass flag, or I'm going to put this on my flag, or maybe there's certain requirements, or again, let my ignorance show forth in my question. But I know not to compare the U.S. Navy to piracy, but pirate captains had their own individual flags to recognize, oh, like, oh, that's this pirate or that's that pirate. I didn't know if admirals had something similar.
Well, they don't
Mhm.
have their own designed flag. What they have is
I see.
an
Okay.
admiral's pennant, and he can fly that pennant. Typically, it would just be a blue background with a star denoting which level he's at. 1, 2, 3, or 4-star general
Okay.
or
Cool.
admiral.
Is that does that risky to present that information to the enemy? Okay.
No,
Yeah.
especially not on an aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier is surrounded by
Yeah.
so many
It's
support
like
vessels.
obviously, like if we were gonna guess, that's where they are. Okay.
Yeah. And of course, if you're in combat operations, you're probably not going to be flying all
That's a
your
good
flags in the
point.
first place.
Okay.
So, when the Enterprise departed the Gulf of Tonkin on January 20th, 1967, her pilots had flown more than 13,400
Wow.
missions during 132 combat days of operation. The Enterprise had steamed 67,630 miles with operations with the 7th Fleet.
That's incredible. 67,000 miles. That's so I think the circumference of the Earth at the equator is something like 27,000 miles. So I mean that's a long distance.
Yeah. All right. So she returns to Alameda and begins her overhaul because, again, they
Yeah.
just got done with a deployment. It's time to fix up the boat. This is when Captain Kent Lee takes command on July 11th, 1967. She gets her work done on September 5th, 1967, and goes out for a sea trial. This lasts quite a few months. So in January of 68, she was visiting Sasebo, Japan. This is when, do you know what happened? January of 60.
I want to say that's the Tet Offensive in Vietnam.
No, this is something that happened to do with North Korea.
68 North Korea. I don't know, because at this point they had an armistice, not an armistice, a ceasefire. The ceasefire had been in effect for a while. I don't know.
This is when the North Korean government seized the U.S. intelligence ship
Oh,
USS
that's
Resolute.
right.
So the Enterprise responded to that and served as a flagship of Rear Admiral Epps. And they stayed in South Korean waters for almost a month during Operation Formation Star. This was the operation code name for this
Yes.
tension. So when it was all over, and I believe that North Koreans kept the Pueblo. Yeah. North Koreans kept her. They actually made her into a
Really?
museum ship.
Huh,
Yes.
I would think they would use her, you know what I mean? But I guess it's a trophy for them.
Oh yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
definitely a status symbol. And of course they put their people on there to rip out
Yeah,
any
that's
and all
true.
secrets
That
that
makes
they could
sense.
find. Yeah, they didn't really need to use her other than for gathering
Right.
information.
Oh, a surveillance ship, right.
Yeah.
Mm.
So after that was done, she returned to NAS Alameda on July 18th, 1968, having completed 12,839 catapult launches.
Okay. I'm getting used to the size of these numbers. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, good old Enterprise.
9,182 of them were combat launches.
That's these are staggering numbers.
Mm-hmm. So she went to Puget Sound Naval Shipyard for a small refitting or overhaul. Only lasted a couple months. And then she started preparing for another deployment to Vietnam.
Yeah, it was a lengthy conflict.
Oh, yeah. No, it was a very lengthy conflict. So that is when tragedy hits. On the morning of January 14th, 1969, while being escorted by a couple of destroyers, the USS Benjamin Stoddard and the USS Rogers, a Mark 32 Xeni rocket that was loaded on a F-4 Phantom that was sitting on the deck exploded because it was overheated by a aircraft start unit.
Okay. Like the jet engine of a plane was exhausting onto this bomb, or
No, there are machines that you plug into the jet to start warming things up and getting it ready to start. And yeah, that's used a lot in civilian commercial flights. I forget what they're called right now.
The
But
closest
yeah,
equivalent I can think
they
of
keep
is
the
if you
systems
live
going.
in the northern United States and you want to use your car in the winter, you have to have an external heater that kind of just gets everything in the right state to start your car.
Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. So the explosion set off fires and additional explosions across the flight deck. Pretty much, it was cooking off all the ordnance that was loaded on other planes. The fires were thankfully brought under control relatively quickly, but 27 sailors were killed and 314 were injured. The fire destroyed 15 aircraft and forced the Enterprise to go back in for repairs at Pearl Harbor.
Makes sense.
This was primarily damage to the flight deck. The repairs were completed March 1st, 1969, and she proceeded on her Westpac deployment to Vietnam and the Tonkin Gulf.
Okay.
Westpac is Western Pacific. So there was something else going on in 69. What do you think?
I know that
that
we
is?
were in 69 we landed on the moon. So there were things leading up to that. Is that what you're talking about, or is this more military based? Okay,
More
69. Let's
military.
see. Was this the Gary Powers incident with the U-2? Okay.
No. This is
Oh,
North
those
Korea again.
guys.
On April 14th, 1969, North Korea shot down a Lockheed EC-121 Warning Star. That was a airborne early warning and control. It was on a reconnaissance patrol over the eastern sea of Japan from its base in Atsugi, Japan. The entire 31-man crew was killed. So the U.S. responded by activating Task Force 71 to protect, flights over international waters. So that was initially comprised of the Enterprise, the Ticonderoga, which was a conventional Essex-class carrier, the Ranger, which was another carrier, and the Hornet.
That's a lot of wow.
Carriers. 4 carriers. And of course, all the cruisers and destroyers that went along with those fleets. So the Enterprise arrived there in late April after her repairs. This deployment became one of the largest shows of force in the area since the Korean War.
Dang.
So Enterprise returned to the Newport News shipbuilding and went through another overhaul and a second refitting in late 1969. Yeah, in late 69 through 70. She returned to sea on January 1971, completing sea trials with newly designed nuclear reactor cores that contained enough fuel for 10 years. June 11th, 1971, the Enterprise has a new captain, Forrest S. Peterson. And they also had Carrier Air Wing 14 on board. And guess where they went?
I'm guessing back to the South China Sea, Vietnam area? Yep.
Back to Vietnam. The Enterprise, the Orzansky, and Midway launched a total of 2,001 strikes by July 30th, 1971. Now, in July, the launches were disrupted for a time because they had to evade 3 typhoons. Typhoon Harriet, Typhoon Kim, and Typhoon Jean. There was another command change in December of 71. This time, Captain Ernest E. Tizzett Jr. is the big man in the chair. And the Enterprise is then deployed to the Bay of Bengal. Do you know what conflict that is?
I don't.
That is the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. Yes. They were deployed there as a show of strength against India's naval blockade by the INS Vikrat. This is an Indian aircraft carrier.
Okay, I didn't realize we were involved or present for that. That just seems like one of those things that they did not mention in my history class.
There was a small issue with a Soviet Navy submarine trailing the U.S. task force, but a confrontation did not happen because the Enterprise moved away from the Indian Ocean back to the Southeast Asia Sea. The Enterprise completed her deployment on February 12th, 1972. She returned to the South China Sea from September 12th, 1972 with Carrier Air Wing 14. And on December 18th, 1972, the U.S. resumed her bombing campaigns above the 20th parallel. This was Operation
Ooh,
Linebacker 2. Yeah. This is when Enterprise and other carriers that were on station reseeded the minefields in Hap Hong Harbor and conducted concentrated strikes against surface-to-air missile and anti-aircraft artillery sites, enemy army barracks, petroleum storage areas, the Hap Hong naval and shipyard areas, railroad and
wow.
truck stations.
It's a lot of infrastructure to target, but I mean, that's what you do.
Yeah. There were 705 Navy sorties in the area during Linebacker. There was 119 strikes in North Vietnam. And there would have been more, but the limiting factor for these were bad
Bad what? Okay, sorry, I didn't hear you.
weather. Yeah,
That,
bad weather. You know, it was
yeah,
raining.
there are seasons for that.
Mm-hmm. So in December of 72, the North Vietnamese returned to the peace table, and that is when Operation Linebacker 2 ended. In January, the Vietnam ceasefire was announced, and the carriers ceased all combat operations in North and South Vietnam. From January 28th, 1973, the Enterprise and the Ranger flew 81 combat sorties against lines of communication targets in Laos. These were flown in support of the Laotian government,
Okay.
and they asked for this help. Enterprise finished her deployment on June 12th, 1973. And we will get back to her in her post-Vietnam work in the next episode.
Okay, yeah, I'm very curious. We're not even halfway through her life. I'm very curious where we go from here. She's seen a lot already. I mean, the Cuban Missile Crisis,
She's
Vietnam.
seen a lot already.
This is a very storied ship. I thought the World War II,
Oh, yeah.
the CV, what was it, 66? So, CV6,
CVN
that's right.
or CV6.
Saw quite a bit. And, oh yeah,
She
there was
did.
a lot
She saw
going
a
on,
lot.
but this is mirroring that. I don't know if it's just the destiny of a ship called Enterprise to see a lot of stuff, but it's happening.
All right, so we are going to honor one of our fallen angels, as we like to do at the end of every episode, with the help of HeroCards.us. And today we're going to honor Specialist 4th Class Daniel D. Fernandez. His hometown was Los Lunas, New Mexico. He served with the U.S. Army, C Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Regiment, Mechanized, 25th Infantry Division. He received the Medal of Honor and Purple Heart. His date of sacrifice was February 18th, 1966, killed in action, Hong Nao Province, Vietnam. He was 21. Of the more than 260 service members who received the Medal of Honor for actions taken in Vietnam, not many volunteered for their tour of duty. Army Specialist 4th Class Daniel Fernandez volunteered for his second stint there. It was a choice that led to his death, but the soldiers he saved will never forget his sacrifice. Fernandez was born on June 30th, 1944, and grew up on a farm with an orchard in Los Lunas, New Mexico, just south of Albuquerque. He was the oldest of 4 children and loved to ride horses. Fernandez was part of C Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division, when he joined the Army in 1962, before the conflict in Vietnam intensified. But his family said he believed in the cause so much that he volunteered for a second tour of duty. On February 18, 1966, Fernandez was about 8 months into that second tour when his patrol was ambushed by Viet Cong forces near Chu Chi, a suburb of Saigon. The area was famous for the underground tunnels the Viet Cong dug there and used as their headquarters. During the ambush, Fernandez's patrol was forced out of its location by intense enemy fire before they could evacuate a wounded soldier. Fernandez and 3 other men volunteered to fight their way back through the fire and exploding grenades to reach their fallen comrade. One of the One of the other volunteers, a sergeant, was hit in the process, so Fernandez took charge while trying to help him. The heavy fire forced the group to take cover, and as they did, a grenade landed in the middle of them. Some of the men didn't see it, but Fernandez did. He knew there wasn't time for anyone to protect themselves from it, so without any regard for his own life, he threw himself onto the grenade as it exploded. Fernandez sacrificed his own life so the 4 men with him could survive. He was 21 years old. In 1967, President Lyndon B. Johnson presented the Medal of Honor to Fernandez's parents in a ceremony at the White House. Fernandez is one of about 60 Hispanic Americans to have received the honor. In October 2017, Kirtland Air Force Base rededicated Fernandez Hall to the Medal of Honor recipient. A memorial wall built in his honor was also unveiled. Several places in Fernandez's hometown are also named after him, including an intermediate school, a Veterans of Foreign War post, a memorial park, and a recreation center. So, Specialist 4th Class Daniel D. Fernandez.
Thank you.
We thank you. Okay, XO, take us
certainly.
out.
So, once again, thank you so much for joining us and listening, and hopefully learning something. I certainly did. I always do. There's a couple different ways you can give back to the show. Number one, you can email us if you have a question, concern, topic. Maybe you served on the Enterprise and you want to tell us about some of the stuff you saw. Let us know. You can do that by emailing us at usnavyhistorypodcast@gmail.com. Alternatively, we are on X, formerly Twitter, X-Twitter, as Dale likes to say. And that handle is USN History Pod. So you can find us there. We also have a Discord if you would like to join and chat. And you can do that not only with us, but with other people who listen to the show. Finally, please rate and review, tell a friend, coworker. That's how we grow. And that's how more people get to learn about what we're learning about here. So if you like what we're doing, do any of those things, and that would be very helpful. Thanks.
With that, we're going to wish you guys fair winds and following seas.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.